Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon on this Friday afternoon, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Now, I'm the only guy. All of the economic forecasters out there and everything, they're all. I'm the only one that's forecasting an economic recovery next summer and next fall. I see it in the cards, but I'm also the only one out there who's forecasting what's going to happen after that. The economic recovery I see coming, and I'm going to try to explain to you guys a roadmap of why I see this coming ahead of time. Now, I was the first one on here telling you when this virus was coming, that it's a black swan and it's going to do this and do that. I was the only guy on here telling you, and I was the first guy, back when there was nobody in the United States had it. I said that they should not let anybody in or out of the country. We wouldn't have it right now. But, I'll tell you, I've forecast so many things correctly on my channel. It's unreal how many things I got right and how few things I've got wrong on my channel. If you've watched my previous shows or you've been around here for a long time listening to the things I have to say, an awful lot of it's come true over the years. I'm the only guy forecasting an economic recovery, so I'm going to try to explain to you guys why I see this coming. First off, an awful lot to do with the slump. In fact, almost everything we have to do with the slump we're in right now was caused by this virus. And, my opinion is that this virus is more or less like a really bad flu. That's the way I look at it, Going back to the Hong Kong flu. I was just a little kid. I think it was 1968, something like that. The Hong Kong flu came through, and it was a really bad flu. Now, that was an influenza. And this is a corona. But the symptoms are very similar, and, an awful lot of people died with the Hong Kong flu. And in fact, it kills people almost the same way. So an awful lot of what's going on right now has to do with this virus. And, I think that an awful lot more people are catching it and it feels like a flu. If it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's a duck, according to most people. Most people go home and say, oh, I got the flu. I got a headache. I got a cough. I got the flu, and they go to bed. And they get over it after a couple weeks, And they just think how many of them are like that and never got tested? And how many of them are not showing hardly any symptoms? Maybe a few snuffles is all they got, There's probably the amount that's tested compared to the amount that is probably just a tip of the iceberg is what's showing in the amount of people that's coming down with this thing. And then this thing comes, like all flus, come and they go. They come and they go. And the Hong Kong flu did the same thing. The Spanish influenza did the same thing. They come and they go. They don't last forever. And I think that this is kind of a peculiar flu, and I read some of the reports on it by one report I read early on when this thing was come from the Los Alamos National Laboratories. They did a report on it, and it said how contagious it is in the report, and it's something like at least 2 times as contagious as a regular flu, which has an R naught of about 1.35 for regular flu. This thing, I've heard many different ratings. I've heard it ratings all the way up to 6. And some of the ratings is like 1.8, the lower ones, But still, that would be higher than the regular flu. But most of them, I think, are settled in around an R naught somewhere in the 2 range. 2 point whatever, And so it's quite contagious, more contagious than a flu. And I think that it's spreading through the population, and I think it's going to hit a certain point where it's just going to start to disappear. And about that same time, they're probably going to come out with the shots. So we're going to see this whole thing start to dissipate. I think we're going through the worst part of the storm right now. If you look at it like it's a big thunderstorm or something, we're right at the part where it's really dark outside and it's pouring rain and hail and wind right now. if you compared it to this flu. Of course, you know that after a few minutes, the thunderstorm passes over, and oftentimes the sun will come back out again. Well, that's what I think is going to happen here. I think that come sometime next spring or next summer, this thing's going to start to clear out. And, of course, people are going to be, because, I mean, what happens if you got a barn full of cows, and they've been in the cows, and they've been in the barn all winter long? What happens when you open up the doors? You let the cows out in the pasture. They're doing something called kicking up their heels. They're so happy to be let out. And that's I think what's going to happen, next spring when this thing starts to go away. I think that the people are going to be so happy that they can go out and socialize, and they can go to restaurants again and bars again, and they can go to the beach and everything else. That the people are going to be like overjoyed, and what do people do when they've been cooped up for a long time is they want to go back to their old, way it was back in 2019, They want to start booking flights, taking cruises, doing whatever, But all of a sudden the airplanes a lot of them have been parked out in the field or whatever because they're not being used, and the companies don't have flights here, they don't have flights there. They're all going to be overbooked. What flights there's left, And any cruises that's left, they're going to be overbooked when this economic recovery comes. And what about all these restaurants they've closed? People got the few restaurants that are left open are going to be big long lines, people wanting to get in. So businessmen are going to look at these opportunities and they're going to say, hey, maybe I should open a restaurant up. Look at all the business he's got. So he'll go to the bank and want a loan, and loans will start to go out again, money will start to flow, and the money will be, at that point, money will be coming from two different directions, because they'll have the central bank digital currencies up and running by then, and they'll be pumping money out like left and right from the central bank digital currencies, pumping money out to people who are misfortunate in the form of possibly UBI, Universal Basic Income. So we got money coming in from that direction. And then we'll have money coming in from the regular banking system in the form of loans. People starting up new businesses and stuff. And, there'll be signs starting to appear in windows next summer saying, help wanted. We haven't seen that in a while, but I think you'll see it. So what's going to be the net effect of all of this? Come next fall, that's when you're really going to see the inflation start to bite. And this is the precursor to hyperinflation. It's called the acceleration phase. But this is a special circumstance. When everyone out there, all the investor world, where there's a flood of liquidity right now in the investing world, when they see the effects of real inflation start to bite, when the Fed starts to see that, there's not going to be a lot the Fed can do about it. They say, well, we'll cancel some of it by raising taxes and stuff. But, it's going to be very difficult because investors are going to lose their nerve at that point. And we're going to have the money flooding in from two different directions. From the general economy, when the banks, the fractional reserve banking system starts to lend money again, because that's one of your biggest money creation tools there is. And the Fed's still pumping, because when they go into these programs like UBI, and they go into these central bank digital currencies, and they start to support people by printing this money basically and injecting it into the system. Once they start these programs, they can't back off and stop. And they're probably going to be starting these programs in January, February, March. And this recovery is probably not going to be coming until August, September, October of next year. So they'll have these programs in place, injecting money into the system in the form of fiscal stimulus. At the same time, the economy starts to pick up on its own. So you got like a double effect, a double whammy of money coming everywhere, The inflation will start, be no heat stopping it. And this is when we're really going to see Bitcoin come into its own, guys. and the other cryptocurrencies. This is what you guys been waiting for, really. And you know, for you guys out there who think, okay, I'm going to wait until Bitcoin gets up to 18,000 or whatever, I'm going to sell it off. You might be sadly sorry, because the upper end of where Bitcoin can go in price, when you start to get panicked investors out there trying to find safe haven assets in a world that's gone mad, the upper limit of where these things can go is absolutely astounding. You can't even put a price tag on it. You know? So these guys out there forecasting $100,000 Bitcoin, $250,000 Bitcoin, $1 million Bitcoin. When we look back at these prices now of like 15,000 or whatever, you know, we're going to say, hey, you know, look back, remember back when Bitcoin was under 20,000? You know, and you guys got to take this into consideration. You know, the hodlers in Bitcoin have always been the right move from the very inception of Bitcoin. The hodlers have always had it right. And, you know, this is where you should be, is in hodling these cryptocurrencies. Because eventually, you know, this system of finance that they've got in place right now that's built on the structure of a Ponzi scheme, we all know eventually the math insists that a Ponzi scheme comes to the end of its line. And that's what this is doing, you know. It started in 1914, and it's had over 100 years to run. And the first period of this goes slowly. If you guys study exponentials, you'll know this. The first part of an exponential goes kind of slow. You don't see much progression, very slow progression. And then all of a sudden it hits that curve where it makes a hockey stick. It's called the hockey stick curve, where it goes straight up. That's when you really see it, is in the final stages. And that's where we are now. We're in the final part of the final stages. Look, back when they were doing quantitative easing, and they were injecting $80 billion a month into the economy, I think they first started with $60 billion a month. It had a profound effect upon the markets. You know? And now that wouldn't do nothing to the markets. Wouldn't budge them. This is because we're much further along in that hockey stick curve. We're much more into that exponential now at this point. There's no stopping this. This is math, guys. You can't get around it. You can't argue with it. You can't cheat it. It's going to crack this system wide open. And when it does, people are going to need to have their values stored in something other than fiat, because fiat's going to zero. It's about all I got to say to you guys. There's only 3 ways out: gold, silver, and crypto. Pick your medicine. Pick which one you want. Or pick all 3. My estimation is the best thing is to pick all 3. You know. Listen, thank you guys for listening to this show. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. Bye-bye.